To the Middle East now. Israel has ordered thousands of Palestinian residents of Khan Yunis in the south of Gaza to move to designated humanitarian zones. The order follows Saturday's Israeli airstrike on a school building in Gaza City, which the Israeli military says was a Hamas command center. More than 70 people died, that's according to the director of a hospital. The US Vice President and Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris has added her voice to international reaction and condemnation of the loss of civilian life.
You know, yet again, there are far too many civilians who have been killed. I mean, Israel has a right to go after the terrorists that are Hamas. But as I have said many, many times, they also have, I believe, an important responsibility to avoid civilian casualties.
I'm now joined by David Mencer. He's the spokesperson for the Office of the Israeli Prime Minister. Mr. Mencer, thank you so much for your time. The backdrop to all of this is, of course, the brutal attacks on the 7th of October, what's happened to the hostages. Israel, in its effort to make sure none of that happens again, struck a school building where displaced Palestinians were sheltering. We heard the reaction there from Kamala Harris. The UK's Foreign Secretary has said he's appalled by the attack, and the EU policy chief has said there's no justification for these massacres. What's your response to your allies?
So my response is that the Hamas murderer-in-chief, Yahya Sinwar, has said many times that Gazan deaths support his cause. So since the 7th of October, a massacre on my people, Hamas and Islamic Jihad terrorists have been systematically abusing ordinary Gazans to pursue their own deadly terrorist Jew-killing agenda. The massive terror tunnel network beneath hospitals, mosques, schools and UN facilities, twice the size of the London Underground, weapons storage and, of course, the imprisonment of our hostages, 115 Israelis, for 310 days now in Hamas' unimaginable cruelty. Look, the latest disgraceful act is for Hamas to abuse these sites, to turn them into terror military facilities. Over the last few weeks, our intelligence has been closely monitoring an active Hamas and Islamic Jihad military facility where 24 Hamas and Islamic Jihad militants were operating. We've released the names of these and the photos of these 19 terrorist killers that we targeted and eliminated at this compound. And we also published intelligence that an Islamic Jihad brigade commander was at this military facility. We received clear intelligence of the threat posed by these terrorists. So in accordance with international humanitarian law, we took all possible steps to mitigate the risks to civilians, including using aerial surveillance prior to the strike and selecting very precise munitions to avoid civilian casualties.
So
we did hit the compound.
Mr. Mencer, does the Israeli government have its own death toll to share?
So what I can tell you is that when we struck it, there were no women and children present. We've released the video of this fact. The compound is still indeed actually intact. There's no significant cratering or damage to the main structure. There is systematic abuse of schools for military activities by Hamas and Islamic Jihad. It puts Gazans in danger as well as Israeli civilians. Now, with Hamas routinely overinflating the casualty figures, Hamas routinely count terrorists as civilians, and Hamas can routinely rely on Western media to unfortunately repeat their claims without question. It is Hamas's Government Information Office in Gaza. Go ahead, sorry.
I understand. That's why I'd like to be clear in terms of what the Israeli government can tell us. So according to you, their intelligence, your intelligence, said there were no women or children present. Was that intelligence verified after the fact? Is the Israeli government saying that no women or children were killed in this attack?
So we're currently making our own assessment. We're a democracy. We pride ourselves on getting the facts correct rather than shooting from the hip, which is what Hamas have done. They've produced unverified casualty accounts shared around the world without any question, no distinguishing between terrorist fighters and non-combatants, no match to reality. So We will always defend ourselves. We will always get civilians out of harm's way. That is the way we've operated in this war. But it's Hamas which continues this war. It could end this afternoon if they released our hostages and lay down their arms.
Well, Kamala Harris has said that Israel has a right to go after Hamas, but it also has an important responsibility to avoid civilian casualties, that far too many have been killed, in her words. Now, you talked about this being a precise strike based on careful intelligence. If more than 1,000 people are housed in a building, militarily, can a precise strike avoid serious casualties?
What I'm telling you is that Hamas routinely lie about casualty figures. That was seen at the very start of this war with the Al-Ali hospital, where the BBC was forced to climb down about saying that there were hundreds of people killed when in fact there wasn't. There have been many of these cases where the worldwide media is routinely taking Hamas's word for it. You must stop doing that. It is irresponsible journalism. It does no good to ordinary Gazans, because we need to clear Hamas from Gaza to give Gazans a proper chance to rebuild their lives and have a better future for their own children as well as ours. We'll always get civilians out of harm's way. That is always our priority. Very often we've put off operations when there is any danger to civilian casualties. Hamas are liars. They are genocidal, murderous liars.
Well, so
we have to take out these terrorists.
Giving you a chance to respond to some of what they're saying and what witnesses on the scene have also said. We've seen these pictures of people looking for their loved ones amidst the rubble and the ruins. Witnesses have said the building also served as a mosque and that the strike hit during dawn prayers. If that were the case, would the attack be justified in your view?
So almost no information comes out of Gaza without going through Hamas first. I think it's very, very important to that, to recognise that point, and it's your responsibility to understand that. Now, these schools were used by terrorist organisations as hiding places for terrorist operatives and as command centres used to plan and execute attacks against Gazans and against Israelis as well. Now, prior to these strikes, we always take many, many steps to ensure that we mitigate any risk to harming civilians, including the use of intelligence and precise munitions, surveillance and additional intelligence. We're currently making our assessment. We're normally quite quick with our assessment within a couple of days, but we will produce the facts. And where there is an apology to make, we will make it. But in this case, this was in Hamas, an Islamic Jihad center, and we have the pictures and the names and the dastardly deeds of these terrorist killers that we took out. And it's a better thing for the world that they are no longer amongst us.
So we can wait to hear from the Israeli government when it comes to the death toll figures and any confirmation on which combatants would have been killed in this strike, is
so
what I understand from you.
Yeah. As a day, we've already released the names of the terrorist killers we went for.
Yes.
Exactly.
All
exactly.
Right.
But this...
And before, apologies because we're running out of time, and I do want to give you a chance to answer this question. Of course, the ceasefire deal is something that several parties are hoping for. Egypt, one of the mediators involved in those talks, has said that these sorts of attacks show Israel's lack of political will to end the war. Is there not a risk that these attacks on these buildings, these crowded buildings, could jeopardize talks?
So it's precisely the opposite of your proposition, Azadeh, because it's only when we put harsh military pressure against Hamas that they do come to the negotiating table. No one wants our hostages out more than Israel's people and Israel's government. They're an open wound in our society. 115 people, 310 days on. It's almost unimaginable, the cruelty which is going on right now. We want these people home right now. But again and again, it's Hamas which has been walking away from negotiations again and again. That's been underlined by Qatar, the US, Egypt as well. They always walk away, but the only thing that pushes their feet to the fire is when on this harsh military pressure. That's what works with Hamas.
All right, David Mencer, thank you very much for your time. We do appreciate it. And as soon as we do have those figures from you, we will, of course, report them as well.
Thank you.